I just want to talk about that how Dr. Manmohan Singh, which was basically the Prime Minister of India prior to Narendra Modi, he was the Prime Minister of India, and how what was his contribution in 1991 economic crisis, and how he was able to take out our country from an economic crisis. I will tell you what was the condition of our country back then in 1991. So I'll start with giving you that what was the state of our country in that phase. So in that time in 1991, the external debt was 23%, the public debt was 53%, and it was almost considered that our country was on the brink of economic crisis. It was in 1991, and the condition was so worse back then that we only have the foreign reserve for 3 weeks, because there was a saying that at that time our foreign reserves have somewhere around 2500 crore rupees in their bank accounts. Okay, you can also compare this data by, if you will see what was the foreign reserve of India in 2023, it was 50 lakh crore. So it was 50 lakh crore foreign reserve we had in 2023, but the condition, the economic crisis was so severe in 1991 that we only had a foreign reserve of 2500 crores. So you can imagine what was the condition of our country back then in 1991. And we right now, we always point out Dr. Manmohan Singh and his ideology and how he was not a very good prime minister, but we have to look very deep. We have to dig very deep into all of his work and what he has done to our country, and how we should be very grateful to him. So when in 1991 the condition was so worse that the external debt was 23%, the internal public debt was 55%, our country only have a foreign reserve of 2500 crores. Okay, and that was going to last for only 3 weeks, 4 weeks. After that, the economical cycle of India will stop. So that condition was so severe that if we would have never arranged all those things, new trade policies and new all those things, the economical cycle of this country would have stopped at that time. And if the economical cycle of country would have stopped in 1991, what would have been the condition of country? There would be a high famine. People will start killing. There will be so imbalances in country if the economical cycle of the country will stop. So that is the reason why that 1991 phase was considered, that how the present government took some major decisions, and how they were able to take out country from the economic crisis. I will tell you in this video that there are lots of things, there are lots of stories regarding 1991, that what was the how the present government first of all, I'll start with giving you some of the examples. I already told you that we only had a foreign reserve that was going to long last for 3 weeks, which was 2500 crores. If you will see the 2023 data, what is the foreign reserve that we had in 2023? It was 50 lakh crore. So like you can just compare that how severe the condition was back then in 1991. And also during that time, what happened is that Rajiv Gandhi, the present government, which had a support from Rajiv Gandhi, what actually happened after that economic crisis, that Rajiv Gandhi withdrawn its support from the Chandrasekhar government. So Rajiv Gandhi, what he did, that he took his support from the present government. And so when the RBI officials and the Ministry of Commerce, when they went to IMF to basically ask for a loan, because we were going through an economic crisis and it is really important to have a loan, otherwise we would have never survived that period. So they went to IMF asking for a loan, but because Rajiv Gandhi has took his support from the present government, the Chandrasekhar government, what happened, that when those officials went to IMF, the IMF officials, they asked a very simple question, that which government you are from, because you have not a very you don't have a government, because the government has fallen. Rajiv Gandhi has took his support from the present government. From which government you are? So that situation was so severe back then. And because we were going through economic crisis during that time, what happened, that on 21 May 1991, what happened, that we were already going through an economic crisis, and then the tragic news came when Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated by one of his supporters. He got assassinated on 21 May 1991. Okay, so when he assassinated, we were already going through an economic crisis, and now after his assassination we were also going through political crisis. So there was so much noise around the country that nobody knew that how to handle this kind of situation. Then what happened is that PV Narasimha Rao was after the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, PV Narasimha Rao was appointed as the Prime Minister of India. Okay, so in that time, PV Narasimha Rao, on 20 June 1991, there was a meeting that held in Prime Minister's residence, and all the officials went there. And PV Narasimha Rao, who was now a newly elected Prime Minister, he asked a very simple question to his cabinet secretary Naresh Chandra, that what is the condition of country right now, like what is the economic how worse is this economic crisis in India. So what Naresh Chandra said to him, it will be really surprising for you. He said, sir, that whatever you think it's bad, it's worse than that. So when PV Narasimha Rao got to know that how worse is this economic crisis, he appointed the former RBI governor and the present finance secretary Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was a finance secretary back then in 1991. He elected him as the finance minister of India. So when Dr. Manmohan Singh became the finance minister of India, and now the responsibility is on his shoulders, that how he will take out our country from this kind of economic crisis, which was so complicated and so severe back then. So he started by first day, the 25 June 1991 was the date when he first had a first press conference after becoming the finance minister of India. And he holds his first press conference back then, and then what he did, that he took some new strategies, he applied some new strategies to basically tackle out this kind of economic crisis. So what he did back then is, the first step that the PV Narasimha Rao's government did back in 1991 is that they devalued the Indian rupee. And I'll tell you a very great example, that the economic crisis was so complicated that they devalued the Indian rupee in two phases. Generally, it is not seen that you have to devalue the money in two phases, but the condition was so worse back then that if they would have never taken those strict decisions, our country would have never got out of that kind of a problem. So it was necessary to take that step. So the 1st July 1991 was the first phase when they devalued the Indian rupee by 9%, and the 8 July 1991 was the date when they devalued the Indian rupee by 11%. So they devalued the money in two phases. The condition was so worse. And after devaluing the Indian rupee in two phases, what happened after that is that the Ministry of State for Commerce, which was P. Chidambaram, he introduced new trade policies back then. I don't remember the date, but then back then he introduced the new trade policies. In that trade policies, what was the trade policy? There are lots of characteristics were there in those trade policies, but the major one was that the exports made very, very easier in that trade policies. And from 4 July to 18 July, because our country was going through such a complications, so much complications now, that time we didn't have any money in our foreign reserve. So what we did, that we exported 47 ton of gold. Just imagine, 47 ton of gold to England to basically have a loan of around $400 million. So when we transported around 47 ton of gold from India to England, we got around a loan, I think somewhere around $400 million, and that was how we filled that void, and we started growing from that stage. So that was the time when we got the first loan, and that's when Dr. Manmohan Singh and his cabinet, PV Narasimha Rao and all the cabinets and the finance minister, they started taking some new decisions and some new rules and regulations which will basically take out our country from that kind of economic crisis. And on 24 July 1991, what happened is that P.J. Kurian, the name of the minister was P.J. Kurian. He was a Ministry of State for Industry, announces the new industrial policies also. So first, P. Chidambaram, who was the Minister of State for Commerce, he announces the new trade policies. In that new trade policies, what happened, that the exports were made easier, and now in this new industrial policy which was introduced by P.J. Kurian, in that new trade policies, the first point of that new trade policies were that industries reserved for public sector are reduced from 17 to 8, because we are going through economic crisis. The government didn't have such high bank balance. You can say, in a lame word, you can say that our government didn't have that much bank balance so that they could manage all these PSUs. So that PSUs reduced from 17 to 8, so that it will not generate a very high, you can say, burden on the government. So that was, and in that time, after reducing the public sector PSUs from 17 to 8, after that what happened, that India's license Raj was also it also officially got over. So I don't know how many of you know about this India's license Raj. I would like to tell you about this India's license Raj in the next video. So this is how the Finance Minister Manmohan Singh and the Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and P. Chidambaram, the Ministry of State and Commerce, how they took our country. Because we were not, I was not born, I was born in 2004 literally, so I didn't knew anything about that. But during making this video, when I was researching and when I was going through all these YouTube videos and articles, then I got to know that what was the contribution of Dr. Manmohan Singh in taking out our country from such a high, very very fragile, because the condition were very fragile. You can just imagine that we only had 2500 crore rupees in our foreign reserve, and that can only run our country for the next 21-22 days. After that we will fall. If the economical cycle of this country will stop, in that case what will happen, that there would be no jobs, there would be no employment. People started doing all these riots. The condition will become very worse, because if you don't have money, you will find new ways. People will steal, people will kill each other. The whole scenario of the country will change. So that is why it was important, and we should know and we should realize the importance of Dr. Manmohan Singh to this country, and we should be very grateful that he was the finance minister back then in 1991. Because if he would not been there, we would have taken a little longer time to go through that economic crisis, because somehow we would have always passed that phase. But if he was there, that's why it took a short time to in I think 4 to 5 months the economical cycle of this country started resuming. So that is the reason I tried to tell you all the possibilities, that what happened in 1991 back then, that how P.V. Narasimha Rao and the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, the statements made by International Monetary Fund, that you don't have even a present government, so how would we owe you a loan? You have to have a majority government so that we could trust you. If we would give you a loan, you can repay that loan to us. So that is the all scenarios. I tried to convert it into this video and I tried to explain it to you. I hope you like this video. And now, because I'm making this video because now Dr. Manmohan Singh also has retired from the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. Now he is retired, but we should always be very grateful to Dr. Manmohan Singh, what he has done for this country and how much contribution is his to this country. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this, you can leave a comment and share. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Jai Hind.